All right, let me introduce my guest this evening. I've got Zakir Hussain. He's a former senior fellow at the Indian Council of World Affairs. Bhaskar Ghosh, the leader of the Bharatiya Janata Party, with me in the studio. Dr. Sumant C. Raman, he's a political analyst with us, joining us. Thank you very much, Dr. Raman. And Leela Ponappa, who's a former ambassador and former deputy NSA, is also with us on the show. Thank you very much to all of you all. Let me first begin with you, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh. Howdy, as they say. Trump is going to say that to Narendra Modi. The first joint rally, if it were, which is going to be held in Houston. How should this be read?
First of all, let me tell you that this Howdy Modi is a typical southwestern U.S. The how do you do Modi? It's a Howdy Modi is how do you do Modi, and that's what Donald Trump says. It's the first time in the history of America that both the premier of both the countries addressing a 50,000 plus gathering of one of the largest shareholders of the American democracies. So this is not the first time. You remember 2014 in Madison Square Garden, New York, and 2016 in SAP Center, San Jose. Modi has almost same kind of gatherings to express his support and his concern for the non-resident Indians or Indo-Americans over there. So from two angles we must see the whole events. Is the largest gathering of the Indian or Indo-American diaspora. It is again reaffirming the strategic partnership between the India and US. And second is that it is like a bipartisan support as an organic bridge between the largest and the oldest democracies. We can see from that angle. And if you see from that angle, you can see that what President Trump is telling, that it is a strength of the relationships and recognition of the contribution of Indian community or American society and economy. That's the biggest thing we could see, that what is the contribution of 4 million Indian community over there to the American economy and American society. That is going to be reflected from this forthcoming Howdy Modi events. Though it has been organized by the TIF, but see the kind of presence over there, like the senior Democrat Congress, the Steny Hoyer is there, then Senator Clint D. Hyde-Smith is there, Amy Bera is there, Brian Babin is there, Raja Krishnamurthy is there, Tulsi Gabbard is there, and a lot of 60 lawmakers are coming over there. New York, and New York City mayor is coming.
That's why, Mr. Ghosh,
it's a mega event of this order.
It's a mega event. Modi is no stranger to these mega events for the NRIs, but this time around with the presence of, and by the way, this is a US president. It's not for the first time that a head of state has participated in a Modi event. I remember the United Kingdom, where the former prime minister, when the prime minister visited, was also in attendance, but this has to be special and different.
But Sanjay, I just want to hint at one point.
Yeah, very quickly.
The first time initially we have seen in before 2014, when I was in US, and we never knew that when the Indian Prime Minister comes and go, nobody knew that when he entered the city and when he exited the city. There is absolutely no impression. There is absolutely only the protocol of the government. The first time in the history of India after 70 years that any Prime Minister goes over there is having a huge kind of applaud, and it's a mass media following. And
I
today,
get the point,
the Donald Trump is forced to be addressing that huge gathering of Indo-American over there, and that goes to the full marks to Mr. Modi and his foreign diplomacy.
No, absolutely, but there has to be a reason why. There has to be a reason why
it's happening in the
why
the
Donald Trump has chosen to address this gathering. See, it's like an election rally for him. And that's why he's choosing this as a platform, which is good news.
Don't undermine one thing.
I'm not undermining. First of all, I'm not undermining.
Most contributing society or the community in US, and their average income is more than $100,000, which is the 2 times more than the US average income.
Mr. Bhaskar
So it is not only a largest, it is the richest gathering of the richest component of the American society.
Others as well, please. Thank you very much. You made your comment. All I want to say is that here nobody is casting aspersions or nobody's questioning why he's there. I'm just saying there has to be, obviously there is something in it for him, why he's attending this event. It's like an election rally. The 2020 is round the corner. Leela Ponappa, yes, Mr. Raman, I'll come to you in just a moment. Leela Ponappa, you know, repeatedly through the course of, or in the build-up to this announcement, there were two words that were used repeatedly. One was trade and the other is energy. Now, trade was a particularly, you know, a sticking point between these two countries. What does this acceptance of the invite, or what does this attendance mean to you? How do you read this? Does this mean that these trade wars as they were being projected are a thing of the past now?
You know, nothing is ever as simple as it seems. There's no question that the event, which is scheduled for September 22nd, is going to be a huge event. And I'm not surprised that President Trump decided to come, because it was probably too good to miss. The Indian American community, as Mr. Ghosh just said, is very well placed. There are elections coming up in the United States. The Indian community is now an active participant in the US political process, and indeed a major source of funding. So there are good reasons. But as friends from Houston were telling me earlier this evening, there is a feel-good feeling amongst the Indian American community in welcoming a Prime Minister of India, the present Prime Minister, and that there has certainly been outreach to the different community organizations who in normal times don't exactly pull together. They have their own agenda and programs and so on and so forth. But this time they have come together, and there's no question that it will be a mega event. But this is a tree, and we should not miss the wood for the trees. The larger question is, where does this fit into the visit of the Prime Minister to the United States, which will really start with his speech at the UN General Assembly, and in terms of India-US relations. Will the presence of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump at a rally like this mean that the US is going to roll back its withdrawal of the generalized scheme of preferences for Indian trade? That is one question that I would ask. It may or may not happen, and I do believe that India needs to have the confidence to develop its trade and exports without the benefit of the GSP. But these are things for the negotiators to take place, to work out. And trade negotiations tend to be extremely detailed, extremely meticulous,
Correct.
and often extremely tortuous, sometimes very dramatic as well. The second part is energy. Now, again, look at the big picture. You've had the refineries blown up in Saudi Arabia. Iran, on the one hand, is being accused. On the other hand, Iran has denied it. The US says it is locked and ready. You have the history of the United States entering into conflicts in Iraq, in Vietnam, for those of you who might remember the Gulf of Tonkin. So there are questions as to who has done it. And the latest information, I think, is that perhaps it was the Houthi rebels in Yemen, where there has been a brutal war that has been going on, and brutal in virtually every respect, military, cost to civil society, and so on. So there is unrest in the Gulf. As a major oil supplier to India, I think any disruption in Saudi Arabia is going to affect us as much as it has affected the world market. And Houston is where many of the oil majors are based.
Interesting.
So quite apart from the event with the Indo-American community, there will be an interaction that the Prime Minister has with the oil majors in Houston. And this is a vital matter because it will affect every sector of our economy, including the movement of goods, the price of petroleum, fuel, inflation. So I would suggest that this really be viewed in that context. There's no question, if I may repeat myself, that as an event, it will be a huge event, lots of hoopla, people are going to have fun, and for Indians, there will be the notion of, well, we have welcomed our Prime Minister. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are all political. A lot of them are in academia or in the fine arts or in business and so on. But just as whenever former Prime Ministers went, the style was different, of course. But the relationship that got built with the United States, do remember has developed over the years. In fact, it was during Mr. Vajpayee's tenure with George W. Bush that I think certain major decisions were taken. Dr. Manmohan Singh moved the process forward. After all, the whole nuclear agreement, the 123, the NSG waiver, it happened during the former government's time. And now you have Mr. Modi going across to move the relationship forward, having defined the Indo-Pacific as a common area of strategic interest. So, you know, there is a continuum to these things. There are events that happen at different times. Some discussions are held quietly. They develop confidence. They might be perhaps more intellectual or focused in their content. On the other hand, you have this great event where I think there's no question that is going to capture the attention.
Absolutely, it will capture the attention. Dr. Raman, you know, there lies some criticism that don't read this event itself as the whole trip, right? This is going to be a part of the trip, and the success and failure of the trip will depend on what we achieve jointly as two nations post the end of this trip.
Saket, let me just point out a few things. Over the last year or so, clearly we have not had the upper hand in our relationship with the US. It's not even been a relationship on an even keel as I see it. First of all, to obey the US pressure, we stopped buying oil from Iran. And now we will have to substitute it with other countries on less favorable terms than earlier was possible, because we used to buy oil paying Indian rupees and so on. So that happened. Then the GSP matter happened, where the preferential treatment was withdrawn. Then 25% tariffs on steel, 10% tariff on aluminium. Steel exports from India to the US have dropped very significantly after that. Fourth, India is now buying a very substantial quantum of oil from the US. I think at last month or a couple of months back, it had crossed $4 billion worth of oil purchases from the US. So we now, and of course, Mr. Trump's got an election. He needs the American-Indian vote, and therefore the Indian-American vote, and therefore, you know, it makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm trying to look at what is India going to gain. I mean, we're going to have these wonderful, you know, choreographed, beautiful, big event. It's going to be a sellout crowd. It's going to be huge for television cameras, all of that. And, you know, we're going to see a lot of bonhomie between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump. Now, I'm coming back to what is in it concrete that India is going to get. I mean, it's great to have all those headlines and, you know, have people in raptures about it. But I'm still not clear as to what specifically India is going to actually get in terms of specific concessions. The US accuses India of not providing an equal playing ground as far as trade tariffs are concerned. You remember President Trump speaking about Harley Davidson and all that. So it's very clear what the US has got from India is crystal clear. I'm still not very clear what India has got from the US in concrete terms.
Interesting.
One major concession, of course, is the fact that they haven't said anything too indiscreet on Kashmir, except for saying, you know, that President Trump would mediate if both parties would be interested in a very indirect way. But other than that, I don't think they have by and large sort of kept quiet on Kashmir. So that may possibly be the only concession as I can see it. Otherwise, it's been India that's been giving, and what we have received in return is something which we do not know the defense related.
Zakir Hussain, how do you read this? See, you've got two panelists, and I'm going to ask this question of Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh also. You've got some good perspective with Leela Punappa and Dr. Raman. You know, explaining or articulating what they feel or they suspect what will be in it for us, right? The trade-off, as they say, in this trip. So, Zakir Hussain, would you like to take that one?
In whole bilateral perspective, I see that two issues are important between us, between India and USA. Number one, that is economic, and second, that is strategic. We have great convergence on strategic issues, and it is evolving, and we have some understanding, good understanding on some issues. security, defense, all these are obvious, are on the table. On economic front, we have some hitches, but we are great economies and we have large resiliency to absorb the differences and harness the benefits of the two economies. So, whatever issues are pending, it might be, it is solvable, and the gathering at Houston's indicates that President Trump need the support of Indian community. If he is not going to entertain the Indian demand put by how boldly our Prime Minister is able to put its demand in terms of trade, investment, tariff, data, localization of data issues, there are a host of issues where we have reservations, and we are not giving a carte blanche to USA to enter in our market and compete with our nascent, our industrial things. So, what I feel that on strategic issues, our relation is going to strengthen. On energy front, we are going to give more preference to United States. In the past 1.5 years, our energy trade has increased so much with USA, and on trade, tariff and other things, there will be hard bargaining, and we hope that both countries are resilient enough to absorb the shocks.
Okay.
So, this is, I feel that this is very important visit, and if we...
So, that is what is in it for us. We showcase what all we have held back, potentially offer concessions to that effect, and expect something in return.
We are not letting, we won't let America to enter freely in our market, as Trump said that tariff king. No, it is wrong. We have reduced our trade deficit from $21 billion to $16 billion, which Trump is demanding. And Trump is very unpredictable person. Today he is coming here, tomorrow he may say that Prime Minister Modi said to solve Kashmir. This kind of person is there, so we cannot be very sure what is going to happen, but on strategic issues, I am very hopeful.
Okay. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh?
Yes,
your reply on the whole host of
I want to highlight this. I want to see this from a series of meetings in the last few weeks, starting from G20, G7, G20 in Japan, G7 in France, and now again in Houston. And the gain, as far as gain is concerned, of course, there is strengthening the ties between these two countries. Apart from that, in September 23rd, he is going to attend UNSG Climate Action Summit, which is a real big concern for the entire world. And now you know that we are changing our vehicle from the fossil fuel vehicle to electric to other. A lot of transitions going on in India as a policy maker. So that perhaps Mr. Modi is going to make them explain that in this transition of India, how the climate, how the contribution to the climate, global climate India could have.
Okay.
So there are multifarious ways to look into this. Number one, the first time any US president is addressing a gathering of Indo-American in the election year. That's very important. That means in last 6 years, the status and the contribution of Indo-America have been immensely focused and felt by the White House that to address a gathering of 50,000 strong Indo-Americans. That's a big victory for Mr. Modi.
Yes, it is. But
number two,
no. But these victories were seen in the past also, as Leela Ponappa was mentioning, minus an event like Howdy Modi or minus an event like this. I'm not taking anything away from the event.
But
let's
again,
just hope it's going to be a spectacular success.
I cannot remember any Indian Prime Minister have created the history of addressing such a huge gathering.
Oh, absolutely.
Where the US 60 lawmakers of US is not only president.
I'm not going
to
dispute
the governor
that
of New
or
York
challenge that, but I'm saying beyond this excitement, what will we get in return? Very quickly, I have no time left. Very quickly, if I could give, because Leela Ponappa wanted to speak.
Yeah,
30 seconds to Leela and then 30 seconds to Mr. Raman.
The biggest achievement from India, from Indian side is the
okay, I just
could also
Leela Ponappa now.
I have about 3 or 4 points.
Yes, ma'am. Very quickly.
Okay, I just have 3 or 4 points. I mean, picking up the catchphrase of Howdy Modi, let's take it further to ask another thing that very often comes up in discussions with Americans. What's the deal? Who gets what? And I think Mr. Zakir Hussain had raised this point. Obviously, this is something that is of interest to both leaders and to both sides. So yes, it will be a mega event. But this is not the end of history. It is not the full stop to the relationship. The trade issues continue, the tariff
Correct.
issues continue, there are patent and IPR issues and so on, which is really the totality of the relationship. Likewise, getting back to the big picture, we are at a time when there is tension in the Gulf, when there is talk of withdrawing from Afghanistan, after the United States tried negotiating with the very people that they have been clobbering since 9/11 happened. We have just passed an anniversary of 9/11. Pakistan is playing the kind of games that it continues to play, and Trump says he has excellent relations with Imran. Don't forget that when George W. Bush came to Delhi, he went shortly after his visit, the United States declared Pakistan a major non-NATO ally. Now, not only are countries unpredictable, again, one of your panelists said President Trump himself is also quite unpredictable.
Yes.
So something else might change depending on who he meets after
completely run out of time.
Let us
Last
view
point.
this
Yes,
in its
completely
perspective.
run out of time.
It is
10
a
more
good event,
seconds,
but there are larger
Mr. Sumant
issues.
Siraman.
10 seconds. Can I finish? Yeah. Look, Sanket, we have to also understand the changing profile of the Indian American. And over the last 20 years, a very sizable portion of them, as they have become economically better off, they have
Correct.
switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. So what happens is today they are no longer, someone who's anyway not going to vote for you. So they are actually assiduously being wooed by both sides. So I think it makes enormous sense for President Trump to actually turn up at this particular rally. Where would he get such a huge crowd of Indian Americans?
Correct.
In one place? to
Correct.
make
And
this
only
switch
towards the end of this trip, as Leela Punappa said,
I
apart
want
from
to say-
saying Howdy Modi, we shall also be saying what's the deal. Thank you very much. Run out of time, Mrs. Zakir Hussain, but we'll debate this in the future as well.